ما لكم أراكم جالسون في طرقات الشوارع وليس هذا مما يمدح بل لابد أن تذهبوا إلى بيوتكم من بعد غروب الشمس فإذا غربت الشمس فعليكم أن. And it's this extra way of speaking that makes you generally feel like I could never take this language as a day-to-day language because it's too much, it's too formal. Book. This is one book. It's by Al-Imam Sībawayh. And this book is called The Book in Arabic. Al-Kitab. Al-Kitabu, Kitabu Sībawayh. The Book of Sībawayh. Sībawayh was a scholar who was Persian. He wasn't even Arab. Yet he gained based on the work that he has put towards the Arabic language, the laqab and the nickname of the Imam of Nahu, or the Abu al-Nahu, the father of Nahu, or the Imam of Nahu. Now this book right here is considered as the first systematic work of teaching Arabic grammar, morphology, the phonetics, ilm al-aswat, and different topics of the Arabic language. Likewise, Imam Sībawayh, he was the cause for the school of thought of Al-Basra, Ahl al-Basra, Al-Basriyun, for it to start being founded. And he passed away in the Hijri year 180, rahimahullahu ta'ala. In this same book, Al-Imam Sībawayh, he talks about how the Arab used to speak. How did they use the language on their day-to-day? And this is what we are going to talk about today. So we know how the Arabs spoke, and so we know how to sound native, because at the end of the day we want to use the language the same way they used it. And this is the real source of evidence, or the source of inspiration. When you look for how to use the Arabic language, you should look into how the Arab in those times they used it. Now what I really want to emphasize on in this video is the fact that we shouldn't, as students of knowledge, as foreigners who want to we want to become Arab. We want to take the Arabic language as not only a language that we adapt, but as well as a culture. Because with every language, there is a culture that goes with it. And this can be a little controversial for many. As I've seen on Instagram a few weeks ago, I posted a video and I was talking about how, based on the fact that Imam al-Tha'alibi, he says in the beginning of his book, Fiqh al-Lugha wa Sirr al-Arabiyya, he talks about how he says, if we love Allah, we should love our Prophet. If we love our Prophet, we should love his culture. If we love his culture, we should love his language. And therefore, in summary, we should learn it as well. And so we shouldn't be this far away from the culture of the Arab. And the dialects that we hear today, they are not as far as we think from how the Arab from the times of the Prophet ﷺ spoke. And we are going to see this today. Now here we have a qawl of Sībawayh. We have a saying of Sībawayh that he has mentioned in this book right here, The Book. So for those of you who understand Arabic and can benefit from these pieces of information, you guys can screenshot this, you can search it up on yourself. This is straight away taken from Al-Kitab, so you can read it yourself. Now here I want to emphasize on something. So here he says, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ يُشْبِعُونَ فَيُمَطِّطُونَ وَعَلَامَتُهَا الْوَاوُ وَالْيَاءُ. So here Sībawayh, he clearly gives two types of people when they speak. Two types of people. When the Arabs were speaking, there's two types of them. There's those who yushbi'un, and there's those who they don't yushbi'un. And he says those that yushbi'un yumattitun, as in they prolong it, like they stretch it. And the word mattata is, and in this context, is to say that it's not the best to do so, but rather those who did it with ikhtilas, as he said later on. He said, "Amma alladhina la yushbi'un," for those that don't do the ishba', fayahtalisuna ikhtilasan. Those who don't do ishba', those who don't do prolongations, very long prolongations when it comes to speaking the Arabic language, and too much emphasis on certain letters and on certain mudud and on certain harakat, that the Arabs, it wasn't their habits. And this comes, and the inspiration of making this video is because nowadays we tend to think that the Arab spoke a Arabic that we now see in cartoons that we hear on news and how they speak on Al Jazeera in these places. And it's a very stretched and heavy way of speaking the Fusha Arabic when the Arab didn't use it like this. Like now we see many times and we think that Al-Fusha is this ما لكم أراكم جالسون في طرقات الشوارع وليس هذا مما يمدح بل لابد أن تذهبوا إلى بيوتكم من بعد غروب الشمس فإذا غربت الشمس فعليكم أن. And it's this extra way of speaking that makes you generally feel like I could never take this language as a day-to-day language because it's too much, it's too formal. So he says, for those that don't do this ishba', those that don't do this prolongation, exaggeration, فَيَخْتَلِسُونَ اخْتِلَاسًا وَذَلِكَ يَضْرِبْهَا مِن مَأْمَنِكَ ومن ثم قرأ أبو عمرو إلى بارئكم. So here he gives an example of the qira'at. Of the qira'at that we know that are part of the ways of reciting the Quran. And I will give you an example about what Imam Sībawayh and this specific example that he gave with this ayah, إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ. If you take the Mus'haf right now and you go Surah Al-Baqarah, you will see إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ. However, look at this qira'ah right here.
ظلمتم أنفسكم باتخاذكم العجل فتوبوا إلى بارئكم.
So instead of فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ, this qira'ah is فَتُوبُوا إِلَى بَارِئِكُمْ. And so this is what's meant by اختلاس.
فَاقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ ذَلِكُمْ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ عِنْدَ بَارِئِكُمْ فَتَابَ عَلَيْكُمْ.
عِنْدَ بَارِئِكُمْ. So here is what Al-Imam Sībawayh means when he says that those who don't do this ishba', those who don't do this exaggeration when speaking, they do اختلاس. And then he said just like for example من ثم قرأ أبو عمرو إلى بارئكم. But when writing it is different. Now here the continuity here, there's an explanation of this qawl by السرافي. He says قال أبو سعيد يريد أن ما كان مضموما أو مكسورا يجوز اختلاس الضم والكسرة. He says that what is meant by this اختلاس is that whatever has a ضم or a kasra, whatever is maksur or madmum, is permissible to do اختلاس, which we just said what اختلاس means. And it's basically إضعاف الصوت بها في السرعة, that when you reading quickly or you speaking quickly, you basically just make that haraka, you do إضعاف, you make it weak, you make it ضعيف. And he says, and therefore إلى بارئكم is مختلسة وليست بساكنة وكذلك ما, and it's not ساكنة. He says it's not sakin. إلى بارئكم, it's not a sukun, is a اختلاس, which is what we said that it means. And so he says فهذا الاختلاس وإن كان الصوت فيه أضعف من التمطيط وأخفى. He says this اختلاس, sorry, even if it's weaker than the actual tamteeth, than the actual regular way on how to pronounce it, and a little bit less heavy. فإن الحرف المختلس حركاته بزينة المتحرك, that this same harf, this same letter, it has the same weight and the same purpose and the same pattern, same weight. He says zina, as in from the wazn of the actual mutaharrik, of the actual regular. And this is why Sībawayh, he gave the example of إلى بارئكم فذهب إلى أنه اختلس حركته أو حركة ولم يشبعها أو الحركة ولم يشبعها فهو بزينة حرف المتحرك. And so he says that Abu Amr, the sahib of this qira'ah, he just did ikhtilas of this haraka. Now here you guys have a brief breakdown or summary translation of what we just read over in Arabic. But what was most important, I already mentioned it in the Arabic side. Now the reason why I'm saying this is because nowadays there could be an Arab who speaks Fusha with an accent, whether it's an Egyptian accent, whether it's a Saudi accent, whether it's a Omani accent, whatever it might be. He's going to be speaking Fusha, but he's going to have an accent. Then we have somebody who is speaking a lahja, an actual dialect, which is words that might derive from the Arabic language, but he just uses them in different contexts, with different meanings, and it just, it makes you not understand it, which happens a lot in the English language. For example, if you give the example of the English language and you think of somebody from Scotland, somebody from the US, and somebody who might speak a Jamaican type of English, or somebody who might speak an English after there has been a colonization, when there was already a tribe and they mixed their language, their tribal language, with the English language. It's still English, all of them, but some of them might use this word for this, some others might use this word for others. Some might pronounce things differently. Somebody from New York might say, yeah, I need me some coffee. Somebody somewhere else might say coffee, or whatever it might be. And so we need to make the difference in between an Arab speaking Fusha with an accent. He might speak Fusha with a Egyptian accent, but it's still Fusha, and we still understand it. The words are the same, the expressions are the same, and the context in which they are used. So the accent is not a lahja. An accent is not a lahja. Likewise, al-ikhtilas, i.e. eating some harakat when speaking fast, it's still fusha, it's still fasih, it's still eloquent Arabic and classical Arabic. You are just not used to hearing it. Like instead of saying, for example, أقول لك أنا أريد أن أقول لك شيئا. Maybe somebody using اختلاس, using very fluent, might say أنا أريد أقول لك شيء. And it might be hard for you to catch it, but this is how somebody speaking Fusha and is still Fusha is going to say it to you. أقول لك شيء. So when it comes to you wanting to speak like a native, you need to learn how to do ikhtilas, how to speak Arabic in a way where you are so fluent that certain harakat, you don't even mention them. Now, for example, many of us, students of the Arabic language who come from the English language, for example, we complain that in different dialects, they pronounce things differently. And we tend most of the times to look down upon certain dialects and dialects in general, but instead, we should embrace them and we should try and learn them and the reason why certain things are pronounced certain things. And today, for example, I'm going to show you an example which is a very common change of letters in very existing dialects and present dialects that we have right now, like al-Emirati and al-Saudi as well, for example. So here, this Imam, his name is Ibn Durayd, and he passed away in 321, and he was an Imam as well in the Arabic language. So he says in this book, he says, في بني تميم قال الشاعر ولا أكول الكدر أو لكدر الكوم قد نضجت ولا أكول لباب الدار مكفول. Now all of these letters that you see that are instead of qafs are kafs, they are supposed to be a qaf. So لا أقول is supposed to mean I don't say. لقدر, which is kind of like a plate or something like that. الكوم يعني القوم ولا أكول يعني أقول. This is something. So he's bringing poetry from the Arab, from the time of the Arab, which is the strongest evidence that something is said in the Arabic language. Now, what we need to understand is that, the Qaba'il, without getting into the history of the Arab and where the Arabic language comes from, the most historical, the typical explanation, the most widespread one, is that the Qaba'il of the Arab, they came from Jurhum. And if you go back, they say in some tafasir, like if you go to Tafsir al-Kathir, he says that when Nuh alayhi salam, he took the ark, inside of there were 80 people, and one of them was Jurhum. His name was Jurhum. Then they landed on the earth. From it, there was, he had children, and these children, they made different qaba'il, they made different tribes of the Arab. So each Arab spoke in their own dialect, and this is why there's reports that says that نزل القرآن على لحن قريش, that the Quran was descended with the lahan, with the language of Quraysh, because Quraysh, they were known for being the most eloquent of the Arabs. Why? Because they would take the best of all the different dialects, the best of it, and they had their own dialect, and so the Quran was descended in the dialect of Quraysh. And yes, we say dialect because in those times were different dialects. Everybody spoke the Arabic language, but those were different dialects. Imagine it right now as Australian English, British English, Canadian English, American English. So everybody had their own Arabic. And so from those tribes, some of them, they, instead of saying qaf, they say kaf. And this is something you see right now in Saudi, in Saudi Arabia. They say أنا أقول لك, i.e. أنا أقول لك. أنا أقول لك. نعم. أنا قاعد هنا أتعلم اللغة العربية. قاعد, i.e. قاعد. And some of them say حقيقة, i.e. حقيقة. نعم, they say دقايق, meaning دقائق. And so this is something that most of the times, if somebody now learns the Arabic fusha, he will feel like, oh man, these people, they just using a different Arabic. Let me just stick to fusha Arabic. But there is not the correct way, because the Arabic language, if you really want to adapt this as your language, as for example, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, when he said اعتياد اللغة العربية, نعم, when like taking the Arabic language as a habit, تشبهك, or في معنى كلامه يعني, there is مشابهة في صدر هذه الأمة, that there is a resemblance when you take the Arabic language as your day-to-day habit and your language, your primary language. There is a similarity. You are going to be similar to the first generations of Muslims. Now let me show you another example of what ikhtilas means. As Imam Sībawayh, he said that the Arabs in those times, they used to use ikhtilas. I will show you an example of this, random Saudi. I don't even know who he is, but I came across this and I, made it on purpose to find. I on purpose tried to find, this type of ikhtilasat, so you guys see what is meant by it. Now look at this.
وصارت قضية ثانية وخليتها في غرفة حبس فرادية.
وخليتها. Instead of saying وخليتها or وتركتها, he did اختلاس. He said وخليتها. He didn't say وخليتها, but he said وخليتها. أنا خليتها في الغرفة. And so is a اختلاس, and from quickly speaking, from what Imam Sībawayh he meant of that the Arabs used to speak with. And likewise, the example of the qira'ah of Abu Amr, if we go back to it. عند بارئكم, not عند بارئكم, with all the harakat, because it might be when you're speaking, or as Saudi say, ثقيل, no ثقيل. Why? Because it's easy to pronounce it. And so here there's an example of an اختلاس.
اعتدى على المحبوسين وصارت قضية ثانية وخليتها في غرفة حبس فرادية وجت الطامة الكبرى.
So خلتها لحالها, not لحالها, but لحالها, meaning by itself, لحالها. And so when you understand this اختلاس, and you know how to use it, you are going to sound more fluent. Now let me show you another example, because some people might say, oh, but no, this is just, those who are not too practicing of the religion, or who are not speaking about Islamic topics and whatnot. But that's not correct, because, for example, shuyukh who are from Saudi as well, they use this even in their durus. They do ikhtilas of many words. So I'm going to show you this example. So here he said very quickly, he said, so listen very attentively. He almost says خلت عليهم بقرة, but he's saying دخلت عليهم بقرة. Now when you are first learning the Arabic language, and your teacher or the program you're doing or whatever it might be, they get you used to this, that not many times, like if you sit in front of a sheikh, many times you might lose on certain things because you haven't been trained on catching on those اختلاسات. And so if the sheikh is speaking like دخلت عليهم بقرة, يعني even doing so is too heavy, it's tiring. So the sheikh says خلت عليهم بقرة. And likewise you do the same thing. We speak in English, you say you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? But it's ishba'. Do you know what I mean? So ikhtilas is, you know what I mean? So you know what I mean? You get what I'm saying? So, and like that. And some people, in the US, they might go to extremes of that, where it sounds like mumbling.
That's just how prison is most times.
I'm telling you, how you know I got into it with a white dude, though?
I think you may have mentioned it in the past.
But it is something like that. I like young, I'm young. He kind of older. He now really be. He ain't want even about nothing. Just like damn near racist. Yeah, definitely racist. Know what I'm saying?
And so that's what al-ikhtilas is. I'm going to show you another example as well of an ikhtilas that is very common.
ايش رايكم انتم اللي جالسين؟ رايكم انتم اللي جالسين؟ ايش رايكم انتم اللي جالسين؟
So he says إيش رأيكم أنتو. I think he didn't even mention al-mim.
رايكم انتم اللي جالسين؟ ايش رايكم انتم اللي جالسين؟
So he said إيش رأيكم. Sorry, that's the Egyptian lahja. إيش رأيكم. He said إيش رأيكم أنتم اللي جالسين. So إيش رأيكم comes from أي شيء رأيكم. أي شيء رأيكم أنتم الذين جالسون. So you see here the Sheikh he didn't even care about nahu or about saying it correctly or about, because it's like a day-to-day type of speech, and it's known that the dialects, even though what he say comes from فصحى إيش رأيكم أي رأيكم يعني what is your opinion اللي, which is known from all the Arabs now, instead of saying الذين اللذان الذي, they say اللي. All of this to say that al-ikhtilas is from اللغة العربية. And it doesn't mean that when somebody speaks fast and is speaking in a way that you cannot catch because you have been used to this, language of fusha that has ishba, that he's not speaking fusha. Your fusha is just not advanced enough to catch the very fluent Arabic. Now here we have another example of an actual Saudi doing some of this اختلاس.
غلب جيش أبو طالب فصار إبراهيم يقاتلهم يمين يقاتلهم يسار ويرجع.
So here he used everything he said is فصحى. نعم فغالبهم جيش إبراهيم فصار يقاتل يمينا وصار يقاتل يسارا.
غلب جيش أبو طالب فصار إبراهيم يقاتلهم يمين يقاتلهم يسار ويرجع.
But what happened is that I spoke this language with some sort of ishba, which is like exaggerating every harf, exaggerating every haraka, so you can understand. But the reality is that those who are fluent, they don't necessarily stop and do that much of an emphasis on the words.
المستميت غلب جيش أبو طالب فصار إبراهيم يقاتلهم يمين يقاتلهم يسار ويرجع. يرجع الباب القلعة يرجع لين دخل القلعة وصك الباب وجنوده حوله قال خلنا نحاربهم على الأسوار من فوق.
Now here we have another example as well with a very common اختلاس that happens, or change of a letter, which happens in the dialect of the Emirates. And here Ibn Durayd, he explains that in those times, and again he passed away in 321, in those times in Yemen they used to change المخاطبة أو كاف المخاطبة, which is what they do right now in Emirates. Okay, and right now they do it here with jim. But for example, here he says in this poetry, فعيناش عيناها وجيدش جيدها أو جيدها سواء عظم الساق منش دقيق or daqiq. Now here what he meant is smink, and here what he meant is aynaki, and here jidiki. And here you can see the explanation أراد عيناك وجيدك أو عيناك وجيدك ومنك. نعم. And this is something likewise here. He gives an example. وبالغداة فلق البرنج المطعمان اللحم بالعشج. نعم خالي عويفي وأبو علج. And so this is from the times of the Arab. Now I want to show you this this lahja used in real time. Now this is the context of this video. Some lady here, a sister here in the Emirates, that works at some company, and apparently they have achieved a very nice milestone. So the king or the Amir of the Emirates calls her, and she has a conversation with her to thank her and inspire her and so on. Now I want you to pay attention to the dialect.
أنا والله إني فرحت لما سمعت عنك.
الله يبارك فيك.
ورحت
لما سمعت عنك. That's what the Amir said. لما سمعت عنك or عنج. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it well. But when I heard about you. لما سمعت عنك. Now let's see.
شوفي بنتي بقول لك شيء. الدنيا تراها.
أقولج. أقولك شيء. I will tell you something instead of أقول لك شيء أقولك.
نحن نفتخر بهذه النوعية من عيالنا جد والله نفتخر. فنحن بنشجعكم ونقول لكم ترى نحن ندعمكم ونحن وياكم وإذا تبون أي شيء نقدر نسويه لكم ترى نحن حاضرين لأن أمثالكم قدوة للآخر.
جعلك سالم جعلك سالم شوفتك والله شوفتك جعلك بسعادة إن شاء الله ما تفارق من حياك.
الله يعينك.
أنتوا القيادة علمتنا إن إحنا ما نخسر نحن يا نربح يا نتعلم. والله يا طويل.
كم صار لك بنتي تشتغلي كذي؟
أشتغل في دوامي الحكومي ولا في وظيفتي ولا في
الوظيفة اللي عندك شوية فيها؟
هذه اللي شغفي من تقريبا 16 سنة عندي فيها الهواية أو أكثر عن 16 سنة. بديت فيها من العام 2020 بالضبط.
Everything you have heard right now is from فصحى Arabic. These are words that are Arabic words. They just pronounce it differently and with their accent.
ما شاء الله.
نعم.
Here's a ما شاء الله عليك. ما شاء الله عليك. Not ما شاء الله عليك. ما شاء الله عليك. And so here you can see again that this is from the actual Arabic, some of the qabail of the Arab in those times. So I wanted to bring this faida and this piece of benefit to you guys from Al-Kitab, from Sībawayh. So you guys take from the early scholars when it comes to the Arabic language and understand it. Because me, at one point I was there as well where I completely, it's almost like completely avoided, and I don't think hate it is a very strong word, but I was completely against dialects. But dialects are part of it's so much you can learn. If you learn a dialect and you immerse yourself in a culture, as I am currently doing right now with the Saudi dialect, you will see that subhanallah, it would in some cases make your fusha stronger. It will give you more of a sense and understanding of the culture that comes with the Arabic language, and you will truly benefit. And so if you want to sound native and you want to sound more fluent, you need to adapt al-ikhtilas, and you need to understand and listen to the Arab using the fusha like you use it on a day-to-day basis, especially those who use it very fluently. Because if you are able to catch them when they speak, it will help you to be more fluent, and it will help you to replicate it, because you are going to be able to learn it if you listen a lot to it. And if you want to learn the Arabic language, check the first link in the description. Assalamu alaikum.